Well, it's a bye week for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they're carrying a pretty sour taste in their mouth as they have the week off. But on the other side of this bye week, they got two huge games that could right the ship and get Ohio State back to where they need to be. Anthony Meglin and Kevin Weike bringing you a bye week episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. Anthony Meglin here with my partner, Kevin Weike, and we are bringing you a bye week episode. Obviously, the Bucks are off this weekend, a much-needed weekend off for Ohio State after a tough loss out in Oregon. And Kevin, we weren't able to chat after the game on Saturday. So before we get into that, obviously our fans are all jumping in now tonight. They will notice you got the C on your chest for the Guardians. Before we talk any football, if you're an Ohio fan, Ohio State fan in Northeast Ohio or in Ohio at all, got a huge matchup starting here in a couple hours. What's your prediction, Kevin, when we got the Cleveland Guardians and the New York Yankees kicking off game 2 in just a little bit?
I think barring one inning in the last game, I think we held with them pretty tight. I think that we got our ace out there, so hopefully that'll help with some of the pitching woes because we have been rifling through. I am happy that yesterday we didn't really burn through any meaningful relievers and got them another day's rest. However, I feel bad for the kid, but 3 straight wild pitches to start your ALCS debut is not an ideal start, to say the least. I think the hitters started getting there. This is a very hitter-friendly park, and it's pretty evident when you have Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge and Juan Soto just dotting up home runs. Judge not so much in the postseason, but he's obviously elite. I hope we pull it out. I do. I'm feeling pretty confident. Shockingly enough, I feel better about going into New York than I did going into Detroit.
Yeah. Well, we're back to super exciting. That's a place that we're comfortable being in. It was kind of weird being the favorites against Detroit in that first round, and they were able to come through with incredibly dramatic in incredibly dramatic fashion. And if there's one thing about this team is that they don't quit, they don't give up. So a win in game 2 tonight would go a hell of a long way in that series. But you guys didn't jump in here to talk baseball. We probably could for a little bit here. What we did come in here to talk about, and a perfect place to start as the Buckeyes head into their bye week this week, is, man, they're carrying just a horrible taste in their mouth, Kevin, after Saturday night. A hard-fought game, a game that was back and forth. It was truly, and I said it on Saturday immediately, that's one of the better games you're going to have in college football, and it was last weekend. But Ohio State is on the short end of it, and the part that sucks, man, is that they don't have the opportunity this Saturday to just wash that out of their mouth. They have to hang on to that for a couple weeks here, and that'll be a motivated bunch probably at the Woody this week, going through practice and trying to right all the wrongs and kind of right the ship here heading into the back half of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They're going to be pissed. I was talking to my buddy who's a Penn State fan, and I think he came to the realization that now they're going to get everything at them when we play them. We obviously have Nebraska first. However, I think that it's going to be a long time before you see an undefeated college football champion again, because with the playoff system and how it works, it's hard to be. You don't know that adversity when you're undefeated after 12 games. You don't know what it's like to lose that game. You don't know what it's like to bounce back. You don't know what it's like to have a tough game and have to really focus in. And you don't have that taste in your mouth that's fresh that says, hey, this is what happens when you lose this game.
Yeah, and I think that's the good and the bad with and I think it's more good than it is bad with the new kind of playoff system here, is because like you're gonna get some of these huge marquee matchups, which was awesome. Like frankly, it was really good, and I'd be really shocked if Oregon continues to go the rest of the way and they don't slip up at some point, And it's like this is the positive part about where college football is in this NIL world, in this new playoff world, where it's like, hey, one loss isn't going to kill you. It's not the end of your season. And because of that, like you're going to be able to play these games. And if you do come out on the short end of the stick, we talked about it, your season's not over. And if you're Ohio State, it's not that bad. You drop 2 spots, you're still in the top 5 in the country. And you got to feel pretty good, at least about that. You obviously want to come out of that with a victory, but when you kind of pull it back and you get a couple days removed from the game, you're like, all right, we were on the road in a really tough environment. We didn't play clean. We had a couple huge mistakes and we lost by 1 point. Like when you really like cut it all the way down, it's like, man, we were right there, but you got to feel decent about that, after
Yeah. Sorry, audio cut out there for a second. Yeah, I think you do feel decent about that. I think with the transfer portal being what it is today, you will see a lot more of these types of games where you saw programs that were faltering. You saw programs that used to be great and aren't anymore, and you still see some of them. But where kids can go and disperse talent, if you want to win a national championship for the last 10, 15 years, and you weren't at Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, sprinkle in an LSU every once in a while, Florida State every once in a while. What are we doing? Like if you really cared about winning as a kid and as a young man, as a young adult, you went to one of these 4 places to win championships. If you cared about winning championships, that's where you went. Now, with how the transfer portal works, it's completely leveled the playing field amongst that top echelon. Obviously, it's severely widening the gap between the MAC schools, MAC group of 5, all the way up, because the best players there just transfer up and become a good player at a Power 5 school and make it to the NFL and dominate. But that's kind of where I think if the transfer portal's a thing in 2008 as it was, I think you see Khalil Mack, or I think it was 2008, maybe it was like 2012. Yeah. No, it was way later. It was like 2012, 2013. You see Khalil Mack playing at a Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, even a Michigan State, or, maybe not the top of the Power 5, but middle Power 5, and just dominating. And I could totally see that being in existence, but now you don't see that anymore. And you see all these kids going to the transfer portal and doing all this stuff, and then they end up being stuck in the transfer portal because they weren't as good, and you still have all the kids come from high school. So it's just a weird limbo we're in right now in college football, but as a long trip for a short glass of water, it is just, it makes college football exciting. People said it's taking away from college football. I honestly think it makes it more exciting because it makes games worth stuff that isn't just in the CFP anymore, when everyone's like, okay, now this matters. There's maybe like, if you're a fan of Ohio State or you're a fan of Alabama, there's 4 games that matter on your entire schedule. If you're Alabama, it's LSU. It's if you played Georgia that year, so 4 to 5. It's LSU. It's the SEC championship. It's the first semifinal game, and it's the national championship. Those are the 4 games you really care about. Like now you have games that you can go all the way around where it's like, okay, we got like, if Alabama loses to Vanderbilt 2 years ago, they're out of the CFP. They're done. They're gone. They're out of here. Just like we were when we lost to Purdue and we lost to Iowa in back-to-back years. That's why I played in the Cotton Bowl and a Fiesta Bowl first, then a Cotton Bowl, then a Rose Bowl, was because I got the opportunity to play in a Rose Bowl because we lost. That's how I like to spin it. But that's just the reality of the situation. And I don't think it's really – and the other thing is people are giving – last thing I'm going to say on it. People are giving Ryan Day a very bad rep for how he's performed in big games. I'd love to go look at the rest of college football. You look at Kirby Smart. I know we're Ohio State and we think of ourselves as better than that, but Ryan Day has lost. He's 2-6 in top. I think it's 2-6 was what I read in top 5 matchups. 2 of those were 1-loss games. 2 of those were 1-loss games and 1-point losses. And 2 of the other ones, one was in the national championship to Georgia, which was one of the 1-point losses, and the other was to LSU, which was a 1-score game. 4 were within 1 score. Obviously, the Michigan game last year, and obviously the what was the other one? It was the other regular season one.
Well, there's there's 2 of those Michigan games, and then there was game that goes to further goes to kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah, I think people are expecting the world, but I mean, look at what Kirby Smart has done with Georgia, and he didn't have a great first few seasons at the helm there. I mean, Nick Saban was beating up and down the field.
There's
we lost to Clemson. Yeah, it's weird.
There's a really good, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm trying to find it real quick because I saw it today. I know exactly the tweet you're talking about. That compared the 2 guys. It compared Kirby and Ryan Day. I can't seem to pull it up right at this second, but it's shocking how similar the 2 are in terms of their stats. And then it was through like the first 6 seasons or something like that, where they like pretty much it was a mirror image of each other. And then the Georgia program took off, and it's like, okay, if you're going to be patient enough to hang out with Ryan Day or to hang with Ryan Day at this point, you got to see it through, because they're kind of on the bottom of this upward trajectory. And like, let's call a spade too. Like, you lost to the number 2 team in the country on the road, and it's like, don't burn the house down. Yes, it's disappointing as hell. Right. Everybody in Ohio wanted to win that. Everybody on that team wanted to win that game. But you both been on teams where you get better after a loss. Like, the attention to detail ticks up a little bit. You're in that film room and guys are a little bit sharper. You're on that practice field. It's a little bit more intense. People do, it's uncomfortable as hell, right? It's not going to be a comfortable week at practice, but you don't get better in any other scenario. And now they're going to have that opportunity to do so. And like you said, still have a very, very valid argument, or they're still well in the college football playoff. And we're going to get to it here at the end and look at what the bracket would be today. If the CFP started today, it's going to be pretty sweet, regardless of who makes it where. But, we'll get into that in a little bit. But to your point, Kevin, and kind of jumping off of maybe Oregon specifically, but heading into the bye week here, what are, in your opinion, especially off that game, we didn't get your thoughts directly after the game, but there's 2 areas that I have circled in my mind of places that the Buckeyes are going to be looking. But where do you you're the head coach, you're Ryan Day. What are the 2 biggest areas of improvement that you see as the Bucs head into this bye week here?
I think that, one is an area of improvement, and one is just a necessity to survive. I think the Josh Simmons injury is gigantic. I think that we're going to need to find his replacement fast, and he's going to need to be able to perform well. I think, obviously, the defensive struggles were evident, and I was worried about it all season when we were bend, don't break against bad teams, and we were bending a lot, and it started to show. I think Denzel Burke didn't have his best game. That's just what happened. And I think the part that threw me for a loop is maybe it might be a little bit of rust, is Chip Kelly's got to get used to calling big games again, because when you're on the 28-yard line and you have 45 seconds left, I get that you want to get the ball in the hands of Jeremiah Smith, but so much can go wrong there. Why not run one of your 2 best running backs to get to the middle of the field and closer? And then I think it was a genius move by their head coach with the penalty. I said it when it happened. I was next to my buddy, and I walk in. I was actually at one bar, walked out of the Ohio State bar to a different bar where he was at, and he walks in and goes, I think he did it on purpose. I'm like, he might have. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, oh my gosh, he probably did. Like, why would you not risk 5 yards for a 4-second play? That's genius. Yes. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. And now they're already thinking about changing it mid-season. They're thinking about making amendment to that rule of how they govern it in the mid-season, all because he admitted to doing it. Yeah. He walked across the bridge and burned it because he's like, no one else can do this now. I got my way.
Yeah. That for just a moment, like, was so minute, like, or so niche, I should say, would be like, all right, you're outside of field goal range ish, because to do that, you're trading 5 yards. All right. So you're trading a 6-second runoff for 5 yards. If Ohio State was just a little bit closer, that gets them into field goal range. It has to be like, all right, obvious passing situation. He could have rolled out 15 guys. You know what I mean? Like in theory, like after you kind of roll it back, like he could have had 20 dudes out there, and it wouldn't have affected anything. Bad happens, and then trade super, super well. But I think you bring up, Kevin, an awesome point in that Chip Kelly's got to get reused to calling these big games. And like, yes, I obviously would be scared to run the football there in that perfect scenario, because you're like, hey, get the ball into Jeremiah's hands, at least throw it so you stop the clock. But in those big games, you have to be able to trust your special teams to run what they should have done is run the ball all the way down to 3 seconds and kick the field goal as the clock strikes 0. You know, like that's what you have to do. And especially like to your point, you're not used to having to do that when you play, you know, the teams that you're like very clearly better than. When you do that, you know, you can, you know, if they do get backed up against Iowa or against Michigan State, it's not going to matter. But in this game, you have to rely on all 3 phases. They should have run the ball, taken it down to 5 seconds, kicked the field goal, the clock strikes 0, and it's game over. Good night, Irene. But they didn't do that, and it cost them the football game.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said when I started this tangent, it's really easy to be armchair quarterback immediately after the game and stuff like that. But I also, it was frustrating because when I went back into the play-by-play on ESPN, you know, we started at 28, threw the pass, maybe not a pass interference. I mean, he was inside 5 yards. He did get full arm extension, but he's inside 5 yards. So I don't even know the rules anymore. They change every 2 minutes. And then we go through everything, and then Will Howard goes down to 26, which was 2 yards closer than when we started. So that's where it's different. And I just think that it's very easy for people to look at it. Like in the heat of the moment, I wasn't thinking run the ball, timeout. I was thinking, all right, we're going to go down and score. I'm like, they weren't putting on the field goal marker of where they needed to get to. I don't know what was going on. What I didn't realize is we were already inside of his range, and that's why they weren't putting it up. But I mean, it's just, you want to get your kicker the best possible option, and you want to score a touchdown if you can. Yeah. And
I mean, Goj, appreciate you jumping in here. You're always in. You're always watching. So we appreciate you hanging with us and dropping this comment in. But yeah, I mean, you can take the field goal if you want to. You're in field goal range, and there's really nothing stopping a guy like Travion or a guy like Quinshawn to break it, right, and to score potentially. But yeah, instead they drop back to pass, and Jeremiah gets that PI. Yes, there's a lot of discourse, right? There's a ton of discourse around, was that PI, was it not? Unfortunately, the flag was on the field. They called it PI. They moved him back 15 yards. It was a unfortunate bounce in that kind of frame of mind there. So I think for me, Kevin, I think you bring up an awesome point with Chip Kelly having to like take that next step. Like, hey, we're back to calling massive games that mean a lot. This isn't UCLA anymore. Like, we have to be really good in our decision making and what we do there. The biggest disappointment, I think, in my opinion, especially after being able to chew on this for a couple days, was the defensive line, man. Like, yeah, Denzel Burke's an easy guy to point to, but you know, somebody dropped a Joel Klatt reference in the comments here. I'm a Joel Klatt. I'm a Joel Klatt fan, and he even commented today. He's like, yeah, Denzel Burke struggled, but it's really hard to cover guys for 4 or 5 seconds, and that's frankly what Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon offense had. They had all the time in the world to throw the football because we were getting no pass rush, and that part to me, Kevin, was like very not only disappointing but discouraging all at the same time.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think Saban touched on it during the pregame shows. They love to throw to those outside receivers. And, I mean, if he's noticing it, why are we not structuring the defense to help guard against those outside receivers? Obviously, you can point to the pass rush for not getting there, but why are we not it seems like it happens every time the defense gets beat. It's something that we just don't adjust to. And it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Like, that's where my mindset went. I mean, we have these two talented safeties. Why are we not going cover two with two high safeties covering the middle of the field as opposed to making one of them come up and cover a tight end across the middle? You have Sonny Styles, who played safety in the past. Yeah. He can cover fine. Like, I just think that's where it almost is like we're getting too cute and too smart with it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it seemed like. I'm like, and granted, again, I've never called a defense. I don't know really what the difference would be, but I mean, I'm just looking at it like you could have done cover 3 high. You could have done cover 2. It's frustrating to say the least that's where we're.
Spoken like a true left tackle. Cover 3 high. I love that. Yeah, cover 3 would be the terminology there. But no, I see what but you're right though, Kev. It's like, all right, even to your point, like we haven't called a defense before, especially at the level that Ohio State is, the top of the Division I ranking, right? It was very clear right away that Denzel didn't have his fastball on Saturday night. Like, that was as clear as day. And it's like, all right, why was he left on an island 9 separate times to give up 9 catches for, what was it, 160 some odd yards and 2 big touchdowns? It was like, why was that continuing to be the case when it was very, very obvious right from the kickoff, first drive of the game, he didn't have it, right? So it's like, all right, adjust, protect him. Like, yes, it's okay. He is your best guy and you still believe in him, but you got studs everywhere. Make an adjustment so that the big game that ended up happening for the Oregon pass game doesn't really happen. I thought that part was a little disappointing too. And people are upset about what Jim Knowles and that defense put out there on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Igbinosa got so far into somebody's head that he was able, and I don't think Igbinosa is nearly as talented as Denzel is, but
yeah,
I think Igbinosa got so deep in someone's head he got him thrown out of the game. Like, this receiver,
in the first quarter,
it was the number 2 receiver, and then there was number 7 who was killing us. Flip Igbinosa over there, have him start jawing at the guy, get in his head a little bit, rattle his cage a little bit, throw him out of bounds on a running play like he loves to do, and go from there. Like, I just think that there's, it was evident that they weren't super disciplined, and it was, at least from a mental standpoint, when that kid spit in his face. But like, what are we doing? Because it's like, it's just, it seemed like we were trying. We didn't want to. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much, but it just seemed like we were a little out of sort, and it didn't seem like we had our best game. And I am very excited because I feel like we're going to see this team again in the Big Ten championship. Yeah. And then if what I saw on the field is true, we're going to see them again in the national championship for a rubber match.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be something, and that would be for everybody who may love and or hate this new college football world. I think that'd be pretty awesome. To see a series kind of happen like that. So a lot for the Buckeyes to get into in the bye week, right? From a player perspective, a lot of guys got to be a lot better. And I would call, and I always hate to call out guys because I live by the rule that if I could do it, if I can't do it, don't talk about it. But I'd like to see JTT and Jack Sawyer take a big step up in their game. You got to get after the pass rush, you have to get after the passer, get after the quarterback a little bit. I'd like to see a big step up from Denzel. And then, I thought the offense, you score 31 points in that atmosphere in that game. I think it's pretty darn good. Clean up your situational play. Chip Kelly, take that next step to, hey, understanding what you are trying to get to in certain scenarios. And I think you'll be in good shape. So both equally on the coaches as it is the players as we head into the bye week. And now, Kevin, the best part is that you lose that football game, but it doesn't tank your season. For Ohio State, they fall 2 spots. They went into that game number 2 team in the country, and Oregon was right behind them. They basically flip-flop, and then Penn State has that crazy, crazy win in LA against USC, that comeback win there. So as it stands today, the top 10 goes as follows. Texas is number 1 coming out of the SEC. And then you go 3 straight Big Ten teams, Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State taking up spots 2, 3, and 4. Right after Ohio State, Georgia stays put at number 5. Miami takes up the 6th spot, and they've been kind of suspect early on this year, a couple really close and controversial victories. And then Alabama, after they were in a dogfight with South Carolina, is the number 7 team. LSU, after their comeback win against Ole Miss, is number 8. Iowa State makes their entry into the top 10 as the 9th team. And then Clemson rounds it all out at the 10th spot there. And there is some awesome brands in that group, but also some just crazy intrigue with some of those teams, both at the top and at the bottom of that top 10. And I called it right after the game. I said Ohio State wasn't going to get out of the top 5. I had them at number 5 just because there were some big wins in there, but I'm totally cool with them being number 4. But Kevin, what are some of your thoughts of that top 10 as we sit pretty much near the halfway point in this college football season?
I think it's a good top 10. I think Clemson's overrated. I'll just be point blank and tell you that much. I don't know why they're rated so high. The ACC hasn't really been anything. I mean, Miami. That's just the reality of the situation. Granted, no one's really played anybody from out of conference that much, but the one that's not struck out to me as impressive was Penn State is the first Big Ten team to go over a big name Big Ten team to go over to the West Coast and win a game. Washington beat Michigan, Oregon beat us. Penn State's the first one to go over there and handle business. And I think that says some stuff about USC. I think that says a lot about Penn State. I mean, that Penn State fans can badger all they want about Drew Aller and all their woes and stuff. But they're having a decent year this year, and I think it's going to be a fun game. And I hate to use the term fun game because this is about Oregon, but I think that it's going to be the worst thing that could have happened to Penn State. Just like the worst thing that could have happened in 2015 to Michigan was us losing to Michigan State the week before, because that was just a bludgeoning up in Ann Arbor after that happened. And I think you're going to see something similar. I think they're going to take a lot of anger out of Nebraska, and then I think they're going to look at it like, all right, let's show people that we really are a top 4 team in the country. Let's get that first round bye. Let's go up there and fight for it. Because if you drop to Penn State, you're probably out of the Big Ten championship, and you're looking at an 8 seed all the way up to 12 seed at that point with 2 losses. So that's where it changes and comes into play, and it's going to be a much bigger game than it originally was going to be.
It's gonna be awesome, and obviously Penn State is. I'm not a huge fan of Penn State at this point in the season, but they do sit with that number 3 seed, and it's good for the Buckeyes, right? And that puts Ohio State in a really good spot, because you go into Happy Valley and take out the number 3 ranked team, you're back in that conversation of, hey, not only are you in the Big Ten conversation, but you're in we're going to be the number 1 seed conversation potentially if Texas were to slip up. I mean, Miami, obviously they're an awesome story to start the season. They've had a couple close ones. You think Virginia Tech, you think Cal. I mean, a lot of us were asleep for that Cal game. They pulled a rabbit out of their hat for that one. So maybe they're not as tough as advertised. And then you look at Alabama, right? You lose the Vanderbilt, and then they get taken to the brink with USC, the South Carolina USC. So you never know there. LSU lost early on to USC, who, USC, obviously you just talked about them, but they're kind of a confusing bunch at this point. So it's awesome. There's a lot of good storylines in that top 10. Iowa State being in there, pretty cool. They beat Iowa, the team that we throttled a couple weeks ago, by 2 points. So you don't know how long they'll hang out there. But I think one thing that's obviously been a topic of conversation for the last couple of years is the Big Ten versus the SEC. And as we grow and move along in college football, the closer we're getting to an NFL's type of layout where there's 2 conferences and there's divisions within the conference, I think ultimately one's going to be the Big Ten and one's going to be the SEC because it feels that way. But as it stands right now, the SEC has 4 teams in the top 10 and then 1 right outside the top 10, with Tennessee being at 11. And the Big Ten has 3 teams in the top 10. Those 2, 3, and 4 spots. It's pretty interesting, man. How would you feel? How do you rank it right now? With both of them, I think are pretty top heavy, but I think the Big Ten's got the leg up for the first time in a while, with Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, all 3 being at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting to see that the two teams at the top of each conference played in other conferences last year. They were the best team in the Pac-12 and the best team in the Big 12, and they are now the best team in the Big 10 and the best team in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think that, if you're doing punch for punch, I think that, with Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and then those are three of it's a much bigger gap between those three and the rest of the Big Ten. And then the same thing goes for the SEC, except for there's four of them. I think that we're playing better. I think that it's pretty evident that, Alabama was really close against South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, LSU is LSU. Georgia, they dropped to Alabama in one of the best football games of the year. And then, they go back to dominating. I think that it's just Tennessee is kind of the linchpin for me.
Yeah.
Tennessee is any given day. Their biggest problem has been for years. Tennessee hasn't had the quarter. They haven't had the defense, but they've had the offense, and they just can't stop anybody, and they got to score 50 points a game to win games. Now they have the defense. It's one of the best in the country, and they have a freshman quarterback that is making young mistakes, which is what happens. And it's just tough. I feel bad for Tennessee fans. I do, because, even though they dropped a lot, they even dropped 3 places with a win. Like, I just think it's tough. And, it's just, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah. And I agree with you, kind of what you said at the top. I agree with Goj here. Like, yeah, I think the heavyweights kind of match up pretty well. And I do think it's interesting. You make a good point that not one that I thought about. The number one seeds in each conference right now, as it stands, weren't in that said conference last year, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, man, you make a awesome point about Tennessee, dude. Like they're trying to be, feels like 98 again. Like, hey, this is the year. You got the quarterback, and this defense is awesome. But I think Nico's got a long way to go, just from a, learning how to handle these massive moments, like these huge environments. The SEC is a little bit different. It is playing, and that's pretty tough. So I think that they'll be okay. But you're right, man. Like that's a good way to describe them. The linchpin team. They would be the difference maker there. So on that topic, we mapped this out prior to hitting the start button on our show. If the season were to end today, and I should have made a bracket for us, next week I will have one for sure, but this playoff would be off the charts cool. So here's what it would be, and this is just assuming that the top seeds in each conference, each conference are the winners of their conference. So you'd have Texas be the 1 seed, Oregon would be the 2 seed, Miami would be the 3, and then Iowa State would win the Big 12. I put OSU. It should have been ISU. ISU would win the Big 12. So those 4 teams would get the bye. That's a good time to remind everybody. It's not the top 4 teams. It's not 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is the top-ranked conference champions. So whoever wins the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC, regardless if they're ranked or not, they could be a 3-loss Iowa State team, in theory, could win the Big 12. They would be the top 4 seeds. So there's your top 4 seeds. Your first week matchups go as follows. Penn State would host Notre Dame in the first round. Ohio State would host Alabama, would host LSU. Oh my gosh. That would be off the charts in terms of everything. That would be 4 really good football games, because Penn State and Notre Dame, I think, are kind of on the same level of like don't belong in that top category, but they're fringe teams. Ohio State versus Tennessee would have all the makings of being ridiculous. Clemson versus Georgia, we saw that. That was a blowout early in the season. You don't know if that changes. And then Bama LSU is always fireworks. I would have a hard time picking, Kevin. What would be the game that you would have circled in that first weekend of the college football playoff there?
I'd love to see. I mean, obviously Ohio State, Tennessee, a little bit of bias, but I would love to see 2 notoriously overvalued programs in the essence of what they expect them to be from a fan base and what the media does in Penn State and Notre Dame. Because, I mean, Drew Aller versus Riley Riley Leonard, I mean, a guy who can't run and a guy who can't throw would be an unbelievable battle right there. I mean, that's just what it would be. I mean, you combine those two together and you're looking at a pretty good quarterback right there. But I mean, that's just what it is. And I don't mean to be rude, but that's where it is. I think that because Georgia will have to play Texas, so I think Georgia probably drops lower. I truly think that Georgia would I could see an LSU Clemson game, which would be the battle of just absolute firepower and limited defense. And it'd definitely be the most entertaining. I'd throw the mortgage on the over of that game. But that's one. I think that if I'm picking one though, outside of Ohio State, Tennessee, because I'd love to play Tennessee and I think it'd be a fun atmosphere, would be Penn State, Notre Dame, because it would just no matter who loses, I'll be happy.
That would be we'd be hate watching that one, right? But no, I mean, all of those games would be played at the home fields of the higher seeds. So that's a game at Penn State and Happy Valley. I'm sure they would have some whiteout atmosphere there. You'd have the horseshoe filled with orange and scarlet, which would be ridiculous. You'd have a home game at Georgia, and then you'd have Bama LSU in Tuscaloosa. I mean, all four of those get me fired up for what could be. But that is a long way off. There's a lot of football left to be played. That's just your halfway point, 12-team playoff, and there's so much left to decide. So many more big games left, and so much more to come for this for this college football season. So appreciate you guys all hanging out with us tonight. The comment section was jumping again, so love doing this and love getting you guys involved and hanging out with us. Really appreciate you jumping in, and we got you covered so much more this week still coming your way. Kevin and I will be back on Thursday for another episode here of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast. We'll have a bunch of shorter episodes here kind of sprinkled in throughout the week, and then we'll figure out something to do this weekend. We'll get some Saturday action your way prior to the kickoff of all of the college football games, and then we'll keep continuing to just pump content out your way. So subscribe to the channel. You'll get alerted when we drop new videos and before we go live. So hit that subscribe button. And then for all you who like to read, head over to our website, si.com/college/Ohio State. We got you covered wall to wall with all things Buckeyes as we work our way through this bye week here. So Kevin, before we hit the road, what would go back to your player mindset? I had two of these when I played of bye weeks off of a loss. What's the worst part about it? What is the absolute – and there could be a plethora of things. It's hard to put your finger on just one thing. But you have a bye week off of a loss. What are you most concerned about? I probably am not sleeping the night before our first practice.
I don't know if I ever had a bye week after a loss. I'd have to go back and check.
It sucks.
Personally, I'd be worried about that Tuesday. I think that I think if we win this game, obviously we'd want to win this game, but if we're talking about what it does to the mentals, I think winning this game makes Nebraska more of a trap game than it already people are saying it already will be. I think I saw it in the chat. I think that this is kind of a wake-up call. This is a midseason wake-up call that was needed. I think Georgia got it too. I think you're going to see them go into Texas and play their best game this weekend. Or is it Bama play Texas this weekend? I think it's Georgia, right? I'm almost positive it's Georgia.
It's Georgia. Georgia.
Like, I think that's going to be an unbelievable game. I'm just looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to a little bit of less stress because one of the Buckeyes playing, but it'll be interesting. And then we're cooking the rest of the way out. I mean, we've got games all the way out. I think we go Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern, then Indiana. Do we play Indiana before we play Michigan at the end of the year?
Yes, we do for sure. I'm getting it. But yes, I know Indiana is right before Michigan. That's a fact.
That'll be back-to-back. That'll be back-to-back games. That'll be tough. That's like when Michigan have to come play us after playing Indiana.
Yeah, so we go here. Here we go. So we go bye week, and then you go Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, Michigan. And on that, you were right. Good. It's pretty well done by you, by the way. But that has you play the third ranked team in Penn State as it stands today. Indiana's 16th in the country. Like, let's not sleep. Everyone, turn your attention to the Hoosiers, man. And I know you aren't, but Cignetti's got those boys absolutely playing football. I don't think that they're on quite our level at this point, but those dudes are playing ball. And then you finish with the team up north, man. They're not good at football this year, but that doesn't mean it's throw the records out. It's rivalry week, man. And you never know how something like that will go.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that'll be a bloodbath, I hope. I mean, I think I'm going to be in Columbus for that.
Oh, baby.
We'll see what happens.
We'll get prime time Kev. We'll get prime time Kev. Well, that's awesome. Well, as always, everybody, we appreciate you jumping in and hanging out with us tonight as we give you a little appetizer before the Guardians game 2, first pitch here in a couple hours. But as always, like I said, subscribe to the channel. Hit us up on the other side over at si.com/college/Ohio State. And always stay locked in as we give you coverage. Your Ohio State Buckeyes on Ohio State Buckeyes on SI.